Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to Illuminating the Stories That Bind Us. In this series, psychotherapist Jennifer H. Carey interviews and helps applicants illuminate a story that is binding them. Applicants can choose to write in a letter or be a participant on the podcast and be interviewed. Both anonymous and both give you the opportunity to voice a limiting story and watch it begin to dissolve. We can all heal, learn, and grow from listening to how the beliefs and stories we create can consciously and subconsciously run our lives, binding us and holding us back. This season, Jen collaborates with singer-songwriter Shannon Ward, who is also co-founder of Fiercely Peaceful and Love Inside Out Now. Shannon is on a mission to help people remember who they are, and she has carried that mission with her as an artist, playwright, healer, and co-facilitator of retreats. She's worked on the WOW stage with Jen and with Nick and Tess Pulver from Breakthrough Performance. At the end of each podcast, Shannon and Jen will prescribe a song for the participant to help them transform beyond the limiting stories they are telling themselves. Together, let's listen and shine light so we can break through and step forward into our unlimited potential. The voices and stories of these podcasts are true, but names and other identifying information are removed to protect the privacy and confidentiality of the participants.
Hello, and welcome everyone back to Illuminating the Stories That Bind Us podcast. Today we have a very special guest that I'm really excited to bring to us that has an incredible story that transformed his stories. And he is going to be sharing with us a near-death experience that he had. So imagine that being what transforms your stories. So for the listeners that have read about near-death experiences, otherwise known as NDEs, you know how inspiring they are. Like to just hear what it was like for someone to almost leave this earth as we know it and come back. There's usually a ton of wisdom, and that is the case here. And for those of you who may have never listened or read a near-death experience, you're in for a real treat. And I encourage you to listen on because you don't want to miss this opportunity. But before I start diving into our conversation, Steve, our special guest here, Steve Lentini, had his world rocked on November 8th, 2002. And that forever has changed him. And I do want to describe, though, it sounds like he was dynamic before then, and he's still dynamic. Steve has clearly cracked many codes in his life. And when I think about Steve and the honor that I've had in getting to know him, and then also in reading about him on his website, Steve clearly use both sides of your brain. I feel like you have this, logical, you're a training consultant, you help businesses, raise their bottom line and increase their revenue. You train salespeople, which I think is one of the most difficult positions out there. And yet at the same time, you are this established author, a spiritual and inspiring speaker. So for me, I feel like you just utilize all of it. And that's fascinating to me. Just the human element, the intuition, the spirituality, all combined with logic and numbers, and which is incredible, just the business and personal development. So thank you, Steve, for being here just as the person you are, but also for the story that you're going to share that will help us break through some of our stories as well.
You're welcome. And I can tell you, it took that experience to open up the other side of my brain, because I was more in the logical and training salespeople and being around business people and managing salespeople and having my own businesses until I was until I sold them to larger companies and then went to work for those companies. I was stuck in what I call results And then I bought the license for a sales training program in 1998. And I was fighting life. I was fighting life. I was going to win. I was going to break the code. I was going to be the best at that national sales training program. And that's the mentality I had carried with me up until then. And I'm embarrassed to say it took me till 50. And a few years before that, 2 years before that, I was with someone who had a lot of anxiety, and it had affected this person. They had 21 jobs, and they were in their 40s. And when we talked about what occurred in their life, it just came to me that it felt like it was a nightmare for this person, right? And that she was having difficulty waking up. And it reminded me of my own nightmares. So until I was 13, I had nightmares that would rock my world, and there was no way I could wake up. The brain, something was chasing me. I could never figure out what it was. And then one day I'm watching one of those talk shows. I think it was Merv Griffin. Now I'm dating myself. And he said, stay tuned, the teaser, right? Stay tuned. We've got a guy who's going to talk about how to end your nightmares. So we talked about lucid dreaming. I did it. I followed what he did. And I broke the nightmare and discovered the reason I couldn't see it, it was fear. It was just fear as a young child all the way up until early teenage. And so it seemed like this person, all these years later in front of me, was living a nightmare, and it was hard to wake up. So I just stopped for a second and said, do you mind if I write something down? And we discussed it, what I was going to write down. And what I wrote down was it takes a force of will to wake up in one's lifetime. That's where I realized the gift in my nightmares, because it took a force of will. I tried to wake up the first time. It was like, no, this is real. And the second time I tried to wake up, and then maybe it took a third and a fourth. But it really took a force of will to say, no, this is a nightmare. This is not real. This is a dream. And here, all those years later, in my mid 40s, late 40s, I'm with someone whose life is like that. And so I was able to tie the gift of nightmares. Now, still, I hadn't realized the gift of all of life's challenges at that point, but I can tell you, a few weeks later, I don't know why, but I bought a book at a tag sale for 50 cents by P.D. Ouspensky, and it said The Possible Psychology of the Evolution of Man, or The Psychology of the Evolution of Man. I took it home. I read it a little bit. I just put it down. I said, no, this is not for me. And then I'm reading a book by David Hawkins, who's a big spiritual person. And he said, George Ivanovich Gurdjieff once said that most people are in a sleeping man state, and that it takes a force of will to wake oneself up in one's lifetime. And I said, well, I wrote the second half, so there must be a signal that life is sending me. So I went to the Salem Library. I was living in Salem, Mass at the time, right on Main Street, in fact. I walked to the library, and nothing back then. I'm going to say that they still had card decks, right? I pull out the card deck, and nothing by Gurdjieff, nothing about Gurdjieff, nothing for Gurdjieff. And something said, go see if there's a reference section. So I asked the library clerk. She said, yeah, second floor, take a left. There's 4 shelves. So I go to the second floor. The second set of shelves had a green set of volumes that said, that's the one. I pull out the book that would have the G in it, the research, and they were, big volumes, right? The big research volumes for philosophers. That's what I was looking for. I pulled that book out, and the book fell on the floor. Now, I got the goosebumps, and I thought, wow, if that's about Gurdjieff, that is just unbelievable. I used another word, but I still opened up the green reference book, nothing about Gurdjieff. I bend down, and there's nothing in the title, but it's about Gurdjieff when I open the book.
Wow.
And then P.D. Ouspensky is named. So I go home and read the book, right? And I'm just in this state of wonder, how did this happen, right? That book was stuffed right there, and it was an intuitive set of events that happened. And so that was a year and a half before I had 2 years before I had this next experience. So on It was November 13th. I was doing a class of Sandler for my clients, the national license I had, sales training program. One second I was fine. The next second I needed an ambulance.
Wow.
And I remember an overwhelming feeling of gratitude. There was never a thought of, oh, wow, this could be it, or I wonder even what's going on. I actually didn't care. I felt divinely guided as I think back about it, because it's going to be 21 years, November 18th.
Wow.
And it's just overwhelming feeling of gratitude. I remember saying that to the people attending me until the ambulance came. How you doing? I don't know how my body's doing, but I'm grateful. And they thought, wow, this guy's crazy. And the EMT had to look like, not only does he need an emergency room doctor,
he needs some psych evals.
And so I go to intensive care. I'm in and out of consciousness those first 5 days until the 18th. I had two friends at the end of my bed. I don't remember what time it was then. I learned later. But one second I was with them, and the next second I was one with everything and nothing.
Wow.
Everything and nothing. And it was an immediate knowing. And the words today still do not describe the experience of immense, infinite love, grace, mercy. What I call it now is nothing like what my acorn brain thought of, right? We think like God, or at least I did. Because when you read all the holy books and any scriptures, or some of the other things I had studied, all the different faiths, the Kabbalah, Hindu, Muslim faith, Muhammad, the Brahma, the Buddha, and Lao Tzu, in fact, talked about that with his students, that you cannot name that which that cannot be named. I'm paraphrasing. But anyway, I'm in this one with everything and nothing, and none of the thinking that we have, none of it, at least my own, none of that, what I call now the small-minded acorn brain, went with me. And there was no past or future, just the present. There was no past, no future. I could not string the events together, because you don't have this brain that has memory and past and future and reminding us of all our embarrassments and humiliations, errors, mistakes, fatal flaws. So that's gone, which is a wonderful relief, by the way, but you don't even think like that. You don't say, oh, wow, I'm so relieved I don't have this thinking. It's just one with the infinite, one with the now. I was like a drop of water in the ocean. I was a drop in the infinite.
Wow.
Then there was a life review. So it was like a scene and a scene and a scene. It was like a theater play. The next scene was the life review. Only the good I had done. Every life I had touched. And I couldn't string that all together until I was back in the hospital room. But the next scene was, I'm leading to being back in the hospital room, was a question: stay or go? From a voice I cannot describe. But it was, again, it's a knowing, because you don't have your body, you don't have, it's not like we experience at all.
Yeah.
And I say, if we all would experience it and come back, we wouldn't be so petty.
Yeah.
It would change everyone's lives, and certainly not before this podcast ends. And maybe that's how people are supposed to experience it, from people that have gone through near experiences.
Yeah.
And I was right back so I said, my consciousness answered with "Thy will be done." Again, it wasn't the traditional thought process, which a lot of people relate to. Am I going to die? What's happening to me? I had let go of everything. And I can tell you, I had never surrendered like that so totally. And I'm embarrassed to say I was 50 the month before that this occurred. And I couldn't even speak for a while, but no one really pressed me to speak. The two friends at the end of my bed did tell me, hey, we're glad you're back. We were just allowed back in. It maybe was an hour or so later that I said, well, what happened? And they said, well, your alarms went off, and the doctors and nurses came rushing in and said, out, this is it. Call his family. And they were calling my family on the waiting room. And then they were invited back in with, he's stable for now. Come and sit with him.
Wow.
And it really stayed with me until this day. It's like it happened 5 minutes ago. Now, differences with the acorn brain is that, that part of my mind that I have still, right? I still have that thinking with me. Is that I have to observe when I get stuck on something that is what I call small-minded, and remind myself that it's not like the infinite thinker, the infinite creator. And looking back when I could, right back in my body, I realized all the events that had occurred, which blew my mind. But there were things that I took away from it, which was, we think like the infinite, the creator or God or the divine, the goddess. We are so far off. We're as far off as physicists are today still about the origins of the universe. And for me, what's amazing was, and still is to this moment, is that the divine was never absent. And it's never been absent. That's what occurred to me. It's never been absent in all of my life. It's just me, the ego, the hubris part of my ego separating me when I was judging things as either dark or good or bad, when they're just things that occur. Now that's I have not arrived at a destination where, I'm finally perfect. And you mentioned, thank you. Yeah, I'm humbled that you mentioned I have a lot of wisdom. I don't recognize it most days. And I can tell you that just being okay with all the flaws I have, all the mistakes I've made, all the things that didn't, in my mind, meet the muster for a life review, I realized that it's not counted, right? It's small-minded thinking that says we're going to hell if we do wrong things. And it's also a religious construct. It was humans and kings and queens and people of royalty that said, this is, and leaders that, hey, we want you to behave like this in this box and not live, right? And not question their authority. And the surrender to the moment and knowing that the divine is always with us. And the other thing that blew my mind was all the good I had done. I didn't realize. Smiling at people, buying people sandwiches, of course, helping people move and physical things, fix their cars, give people a ride when they needed them. My family, friends, all of that flashed before me.
Wow.
And that's really the job, is to do good. But we're trained. Where the education system works on our intellect, it doesn't teach young people how to embrace what they come here naturally. They don't come here judging anything. They're taught to judge things. And we teach them that intellect has value in life. And I'm not saying it doesn't. It certainly does. You can see all the books behind me. I do a lot of reading and study, and but that's not. It doesn't have any value on the other side, right? All the things I thought had value, that I had written books, that I owned a number of homes, that I, had this title and that title and had done this and spoke there. And there was no mention of that. All the stuff that with the acorn brain says, hey, this is how you get your value. That's living from the outside in. I gave up looking for validation on the outside and doing my own work. Now, I wasn't doing my own work. Right? I was a licensee for another company. So it was that experience. And then my brain wanted to hang on to the license, right? It still had some of the remnants of, you're going to fight and overcome this, even though I was in the hospital, by the way, a total of 100 days, 60 days straight.
Wow.
40 the next 60 and 6 months out of work. But I can tell you, miracles just continued to happen. $24,000 came in the mail after I was in the hospital 4 weeks, and people started to hear about it. $24,000 just was sent in by people.
Wow.
There was no fund me. It was just people hearing about it. 5 job offers came from people.
Wow.
3 of them knew what I was going through. 2 didn't know. They just called and said, hey, your name popped into my head. I got a job for you. So I ended up giving up the license. I did take a job that allowed me to continue my own work. I developed my own work, and I wrote the book, Wake Up, Jump Into Your Life. And the other thing I noted too is that all that we've been taught, that one religion may be more important than another, or one title may be more important to another. None of that exists in the place we go to next, what I call now what's next, the infinite.
Mm-hmm.
There was no male, no female. There was no sexes. There was no nationality or races or countries or things to fight about. I was back with one, yet still having that identity, but not what most people call the I. Well, I did this and I did that. The identity, what I recognize over time, and I'm still working on this through self-observation, is it's above all that chatter that goes on in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
The silence behind it. Like the moment you took before we did the Zoom, right? To center. To find a space between thoughts. It divine is, and we always have access to it. It's just that when I'm stuck in a reaction, because my brain says, you hear that? You better defend it. You better argue. You better get angry. You better do this. You better do that. And if I follow it, if that automatic thought leads to an automatic reaction, it's 95% of the time not good, because it's not from divine source. I mean, divine source made an infinite universe that we're just still discovering, right? You look at the James Webb telescope and the Hubble, what it's discovering, it boggles people's minds. And yet we think we have it all figured out, or at least I did. And I still do many moments in every day until I catch myself. So the good we do is etched onto the fabric of time. There is no such thing as sin. It's a human construct. It's not an infinite creator that thinks like us, like, you did me wrong and you sinned and I am condemning you to burn in hell forever. That's human. Right?
Yes.
Vengeance is mine.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not doubting the holy books. I think the truth is in all of them, but humans wrote them. And if someone had a bad day, right, writing about some of the prophets, no matter who walked the earth, right? Because they're all prophets. They all had divine ideas. Somehow the human gets in there because it's that acorn brain. That ego is so powerful, and we tend to believe it. And I am so grateful that I get to question my answers as Osho's answers question.
Yeah, you pause, and that. So the theme seems to be that before this near-death experience, although you clearly had 2 years of some sort of alignment, kind of almost prepping you for it, there was a foundation. It wasn't just a dramatic thing because you had all these synchronicities and just awakenings, essentially, beforehand. And then it sounds like the black and white thinking that you had, or even the ego, whether it was identity or it was shaming or guilting, and perhaps any stories that fell underneath that, like, if I do this, I'm going to burn in hell, could be one story, right? Or if I don't get all these licenses, I'm a piece of whatever, these could be the stories, but it sounds like after the near-death experience, you may have the stories, they may pass through your mind, you may get caught up, but there's a pause because you experienced this infinite, you experienced this place where there wasn't shaming, there wasn't judging as right or wrong, black or white. And so it just gives you breath. And maybe, breath into whatever that story or belief is. And you think differently and you choose differently as a result.
Yeah.
And respond differently, as you said.
Yeah. I mean, I still get the temptation to respond to small-minded thinking. And often I still do. But once I catch it, it's that witnessing level. I'm the witness to what's happening in life. And before I was the witness with a need to respond, right? That those thoughts were running me. Rainier Maria Rilke in the 1800s called that little voice, that voice, the little hooligan. And he said, will you let it run you or will you run it? And Muhammad said, what reaches you is meant for you. And what misses wasn't. I'm paraphrasing.
I love that.
And Jesus Christ said, everything works together for good. We've had all these messages for eons.
Yes. Yep.
And it's very difficult to overcome them. And somehow I ended up with this gift, albeit not wrapped as I would have liked, but somehow even waiting for the ambulance, I didn't have that thinking. It was already gone. Like I was ready for what was unfolding. I had surrendered. And up until that moment, I was going to be the best licensee, the best author, the best, blah, 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 the best, the best, the best, the best. I was fighting life, like Eckhart Tolle says.
Yeah.
And when you fight life, life fights you, he goes on to say. And it was occurring. And it felt like life gave me the biggest gift with a 2x4, right? It took like a whack over the head to wake me up. But going back to 2003, after I got out of the hospital, I wrote Wake Up, Jump Into Your Life right after I got out of the hospital, because I realized that whole 2 years leading up to that event was about what it takes to wake up in one's lifetime. And that's what I'm helping clients with today is to challenge their own thinking. And it's everywhere. It's in businesses and small businesses, family businesses, and it's in big corporations, because what people struggle with is believing their own thoughts and take things personal. What if nothing's personal? Because nothing's personal in the infinite, by the way.
No, yeah.
At least in my experience. And I don't try to convince people. I say, prove it to yourself.
Yeah.
Never anyone or anything blindly. Prove to yourself if you can expand your thinking and start to catch where a trigger catches you. You might be in the middle of an outburst.
Yes.
A response to a trigger where you could say, oh, wait, okay, no, I'm not going here with this. Let's talk.
Yes.
Let me do something different. And it does make a difference. And it's a journey. There is no destination. But what excites me is every night I use those words, thy will be done. I'm responding to the universe, the creator, the divine. I call it God in when I write and when I talk about it, although I also call it the universe, the creator. It doesn't matter. It had no name.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You know, you made me think of another theme that you said earlier about that came from you confronting your nightmare. And that awakening, that when you finally overcame the reoccurring nightmares that you had, that was also an awakening to that being not even real, right? Fear. I always love the acronym. I tell my clients, false evidence appearing real. So that was another brick in the foundation before this happened, that you were kind of being led down that road, that these are just stories. They're not even real. They're nightmares, that we create.
I was embarrassed. I wouldn't talk about those years, all those years I had my nightmares, because it was something to keep quiet. Only my mother and a few of the siblings, where there were 7 of us, but at that point in time, there was only 3 or 4 living home, depending on what stage they were in, because there were so many years. There was a big gap in the kids, and my twin brother and I were the youngest. And I was embarrassed by it, right? But they would tell me later, we'd find you outside, we'd find you in the living room, walking around the house, but even outside, and they and have to bring me back in the house and trying to run away from whatever it was. I was embarrassed by it. And I'm embarrassed by nothing anymore, although the acorn brain tries to embarrass me. But I think of what David Rohr says. He prays every day to be humiliated.
Because it humbles him. I know. I'm like, I don't think I can handle that. But it's,
But it's kind of like the Buddha finally resting under the tree. He spent so many years trying to become the perfect soul, because as a youth, he was told we think you're going to be the Buddha, the next Buddha. And he got so exasperated and exhausted from study and training sages, gurus, reading ancient texts, trying to become this perfect being. And when he collapsed under the tree, it was that awakening where he realized, and the laughing Buddha is realizing, I'm okay. I'm lovable, flaws and all, and it's okay.
That's right.
That's what it took me It's
Yes.
that 2x4 to get me to that place where I wasn't self-loathing and embarrassed, and also on the other side of that, searching for things that gave me value from the outside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that external validation. You got a visitor. They want to be a part of this. So, yeah, that external validation that you mentioned as well, kind of the identity coming from the outside. And there was something else that you just said that I was just thinking of. Being embarrassed to share it. That's a big part that I'm finding in this journey, Steve. I'm like, just come on my podcast, write me a letter. You can be anonymous. You don't even have to. And people are still afraid of just sharing their story there. And there's so much liberation in that, right? There's like that alone, just the sharing of it. I don't know if you have any advice for people around that, just the courage and the bravery to just share it.
Well, let's start with the nightmares. Embarrassed about them, wouldn't share it. And I realized they were the root of my biggest gift.
Mm-hmm.
I never would have discovered Gurdjieff and the work of self-observation, Ouspensky, Red Hawk, all the people I've studied. David Hawkins, it's Richard Rohr, by the way, not David, or Richard Rohr, who talks about being humiliated and humbled. It was the beginning of accepting everything that's occurred in my life as a gift. It's divine. There's nothing separate from the infinite, whatever you call it.
Wow.
Nothing.
So if you had just avoided it and never shared it because you were too embarrassed, you would have never had this growth, this purpose, this all that has come from that. Hopefully that will inspire people. It's almost like a roadblock if we don't share it, and we say that with compassion and love, of course, but like, please, like we're just trying to encourage people. That could be the seed. Others. Yeah, that could be the
that gift they might have.
Yeah,
that they're embarrassed to share could help many, many others. And it's what we come here to do.
That's right.
Life, I didn't wake up to life, by the way, right? It takes a force of will to wake up in one's lifetime. It actually took life slamming me with a 2x4 to wake me up.
Mm-hmm.
And that too was a gift. But I would have probably been complaining and moaning and saying, oh, look at me, I'm in the hospital, blah, 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 had I not had the awakening that my nightmares were a gift.
Yeah. Wow. So then that had already changed that story. You had already had that story changed so that when you were in the ambulance, you were just like, this is okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was expecting it to unfold, wondering about how it would unfold, although not really until later. I mean, I didn't have any of those thoughts like, what's this going to bring me? I did think this is like a forest flood or a fire.
Mm-hmm.
I was already embracing it, like it's going to sweep all the debris away, all the old growth away, and up will come something new. And that's exactly what's occurred. Mm-hmm. We can find our calling or our gift, or maybe it's just something to say to someone on a corner when you get the intuition that they are suffering like you did, and then you can share your gift. And today, when I get that opportunity, whether it's somebody knocking on my door to a window at a rest area when I'm driving to ask for money, and some have a story like, oh, my debit card doesn't work anymore. I'm not sure why. I don't know. I don't have enough gas. I just say, don't share the story. Tell me what you need. Whether it's a sandwich or gas or helping someone, or I'm paying attention to what shows up, because it's all divine. And then after I do what that moment brought me, so whether it's helping someone or coaching someone or buying someone a sandwich or stuffing $20 in somebody's pocket, I say thank you to the universe. Quickly, I say thank you, God, for allowing me to serve you. We're never not getting the opportunity to serve. Never.
True.
And we're never not getting gifts, especially in the most difficult and challenging, at least for me.
Yes.
I'm not trying to convince people, but
I
encourage people, go prove it to yourself. Make your life a miracle. We live in a miracle. That's the other thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We're floating around. I keep these next to my desk to remind me, right? We're floating around on this, and it's probably smaller than this marble.
Yeah.
next to me to remind me, oh yeah, okay, when I'm think I'm the big deal.
Remember, I'm just a speck. Yeah.
Oh, I'm a speck on I'm a tiny speck on a speck.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
I love watching the ants in the ground because I'll think, is that us in the universe?
I know, right? Yeah, that probably. Probably. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much, Steve, for everything that you shared today. And I hope that people will be inspired and just have a different perspective on, various things, challenging things that happen in our lives, as well as the inspiration of, that we're never separate from divine and being of service. It sounds like your life review is going to be volumes more now when the next time you actually officially choose to move on. Is there any parting words, like any last bit of wisdom that you want to share for people who are trying to break through stories that are binding them?
Well, there are things that occur that are very hard to accept as gifts. Mm-hmm. Right? I had a brother that committed suicide many years ago. When I was 21, he was 35. A nephew that was killed in a car accident, right? There are things that we have to embrace, that learning of handling grief. And maybe we needed to learn to love someone more while they were around. I don't know what the lesson is for each individual, mm-hmm. but there's a gift in everything. Some may take longer for people to get. And be patient. Just wait. Mm-hmm. Ask. You can ask, what's the gift in this? You could even be a little angry. What's the gift in this? It's okay. Mm-hmm. God is not judging us. We're the ones judging.
True.
And when we're judging, we're the ones that feel what it's like to judge others, and we're feeling like what it's judged, but God is not doing it. The divine is not doing it. Mm-hmm. I tell people too, I'll leave a final thought. Read The God of Spinoza.
The God of Spinoza. Okay.
Baruch Spinoza. He lived in the 1600s. And when Einstein was asked about God, he answered in two ways. He would say, well, the superior reasoning power that formed this unimaginable universe is my idea of God. And other times he would answer, read The God of Spinoza. That forms my idea of God. It's amazing. It was written in the 1600s. That is very close to what I experienced. And it made me wonder. I have it in one of my books, Sage Advice. I have, he's one of the chapters, Baruch Spinoza. I wondered if he did experience maybe a near-death experience and came back to say, live, follow your heart, pursue everything that's here on this earth, because we're here such a short time. I'm going to be 71 this year, and it went so fast, but I can tell you, since that occurred, I've never enjoyed every moment more. Never enjoyed every day and every moment. And I get little God winks every day. People coming to me for things which I know is the universe saying, all right, well, you think you're such a good guy. Let's see if you'll help this one. And so the opportunities come to do good, and we get to choose, especially when we're triggered. We want to be angry. We want to defend. We want to lash out. We want to disagree with people in today's world that don't agree on so many things, right? We don't have to go into the details of that. It's very evident. But doing good is much healthier, and being for what's right as opposed to being right, because being right makes so many people wrong. And if we can just sometimes just maybe not say anything or ask a question, well, that's interesting. I don't agree with you, but how did you come to that conclusion? Just have a dialogue.
Yeah.
And think for a minute, why is everything one where the universe, where the infinite resides, the infinite, and everything broken down into so many different species here?
Yeah.
It's for us to learn and grow and get over all this little acorn brain. Expand into the infinite. Like, it might be a question that I sometimes ask, well, what would the infinite do here?
Yeah.
Where's the infinite in this? It shows up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Steve. Really good note to end on. Just to appreciate every moment, appreciate life, look at it as a gift, ask the questions. Where's the infinite in this? Thank you so much for being a part of this. And I look forward to.
I'm grateful.
Yeah. And I just look forward to hearing how this impacts people. I know it will. And just keep doing what you're doing.
I will, with your encouragement. Thank you, Jen.
You're welcome. Thank you, Steve.
You've been a big key to helping me propel and do what's mine to do, right? Because I was hiding out a little bit about it.
Good.
And just where I thought people needed to hear the message, now I let that go because that's small-minded, right? That's part of the ego. Thank you.
Yay. Oh my goodness. My pleasure, my honor. I'm so happy to be a part of that. Yay. Thank you, Steve. And thank you, everybody. Bye.
Yeah. Bye, everybody. Try it. Test it. Prove it to yourself.
I like that. Prove it to yourself.
If you'd like to be a participant on Illuminating the Stories That Bind Us, please fill out the form on jenniferhcarey.com. Jennifer would like to thank every single person that makes this possible, including all of the listeners. Because of you listening and sharing these stories, we may illuminate them and unbind the participants stuck in them. And to the participants, your courage and bravery makes this possible. Thank you. A million thank yous to Cassie Brooks Bowling and her team in making this mission come alive and keep it breathing. You can follow Jen at Jennifer H. Carey on Instagram and on Facebook at Jennifer H. Carey Counseling.